Hello students. Today our topic of lecture is on ovarian tumor. As it is a very vast topic, first I'll deal with the non-neoplastic enlargements of the ovary like different types of cysts and then benign ovarian tumors. Malignant ovarian tumors will be discussed in the next lecture. So you must be knowing about the normal ovaries. Normal ovaries, as you know, the dimensions are 5 into 3 into 3 centimeters, and variation in dimensions can result from either endogenous hormonal production, which varies with age and menstrual cycle, or exogenous substances including oral contraceptive pills, GnRH agonists, or ovulation inducing medications like clomiphene citrate, etc. in cases of infertility, or GnRH analogs also can be used for ovulation induction. These may affect the size of the ovaries. Here, see the origin of ovarian tumors. Some are mostly are developing from surface epithelial stroma. These are serous tumors, mucinous tumors, endometrioid type, clear cell and transitional cell carcinomas. Then comes germ cell varieties. These are dysgerminomas, yolk sac tumors, embryonal carcinomas, choriocarcinomas and teratomas, and sex cord stromal tumors which develop from sex cords like granulosa cell tumor, thecoma, fibroma, Sertoli Leydig cell tumors, and steroid dependent tumors. Now coming to ovarian tumors or ovarian neoplasms. So first we have to discuss non-neoplastic enlargements of the ovaries like different types of functional cysts, and then primary ovarian neoplasm and secondary ovarian neoplasm. Non-neoplastic functional distension cyst of the ovaries and polycystic ovaries. To define a functional cyst, its size must be at least 3 cm but not more than 7 cm. Now different types of cysts are there. So first coming to the most important one, that is follicular cyst. Follicular cysts are where the cystic follicles are of diameter more than 3 centimeters but not more than 7 or 8 centimeters. These are most common functional cysts. These are lined by granulosa cells as a result of failure of absorption of the fluid in an incompletely developed follicle or an ovulation found incidentally on pelvic examination. Usually these are asymptomatic, usually resolve within 4 to 8 weeks with expectant management. Sometimes they may rupture or toss, that is having torsion, causing pain and peritoneal symptoms. These are the result of failure of absorption of the fluid in an incompletely developed follicle or an ovulation, as I told you earlier, usually asymptomatic. As I told you, they have rupture or sometimes torsion supervenes. Sometimes they can have hemorrhage, in which cases signs of acute abdomen develops. Most follicular cysts disappear spontaneously within few weeks. If any cyst persists for longer than 3 months or size increases to more than 7 cm, the possibility of a neoplastic cyst must be kept in mind and the patient is investigated accordingly. Then coming to corpus luteum cysts. These are also called granulosa lutein cysts. These are less common than follicular cyst, may rupture leading to hemoperitoneum and then requiring surgical management or urgent laparotomy, and unruptured cysts may cause pain because of bleeding into enclosed ovarian cavity. These occur because of the persistent corpus luteum cyst may cause local pain or tenderness, as I told you, or even they can cause delayed menstruation, and these cysts are palpable clinically. The other one is theca lutein cyst. These are sometimes enlarged to several centimeters in diameter, usually bilateral and filled with straw colored fluids. And theca lutein cysts are less common usually bilateral as I told you, and do not commonly occur in normal pregnancy but often associated with hydatidiform moles, choriocarcinoma, multiple gestations, use of ovulation inducing drugs like clomiphene therapy. Functional cysts are distinguished from neoplastic cells by the fact that they never grow more than 7 to 8 centimeter in size and are unilocular with clear fluid and regress after some time. Now, management of functional cyst, as I told you earlier, expectant management, just waiting for 2 to 3 cycles is appropriate. Combined oral contraceptives are used, but usually they appear to be of no benefit. They regress spontaneously. Should cyst persist, surgical management is often indicated, where we do ovarian cystectomy either by open method like laparotomy or by laparoscopically. Now coming to other type of cyst, that is endometrioma or chocolate cyst of ovary or ovarian endometriosis. These are pseudocysts lined by invagination of the ovarian cortex and then sealed off by adhesions. They may completely replace normal ovarian tissue. Cyst walls are usually very thick and fibrotic. Malignant transformation is 0.3 to 0.8% and management is either medical and or surgical. Now one I left, that is polycystic ovarian syndrome, where we find polycystic ovaries and macroscopically both ovaries are enlarged, though one PCOS ovary is also diagnostic, and here multiple cysts more than 12 or at least 12 of 2 to 9 centimeter size are located peripherally along the surface of the ovary, giving it a necklace appearance on ultrasound. Now coming to neoplastic ovarian lesions or ovarian tumors. These are either primary ovarian tumor or secondary ovarian tumor. So primary में nature is again divided as benign. This can be borderline or malignant. Malignant ovarian tumor like malignant ovarian tumor or ovarian carcinoma I am going to deal with in later part in the second class. Today main discussion will be on benign type of tumors, origin mainly from epithelial, or as I told you in previous slide, it can be epithelial or can be sex cord stromal, or it can be germ cell origin. Secondary ovarian tumors, where the primary tumor is somewhere else like in colon or other GI organs, and secondarily coming to ovaries. Ovarian tumors as such is not a single entity but a complex wide spectrum of neoplasms involving a variety of histological tissue ranging from epithelial tissues, connective tissues, specialized hormone secreting cells to germinal and embryonal cells. The most common are epithelial tumors, forming 80% of all tumors. 80% are benign tumors and 20% are malignant. Of all the malignant tumors, 90% are epithelial in origin, 80% are primary in ovary and 20% secondary from breast, GIT and colon. Benign tumors can become secondarily malignant. Mucinous cyst becomes malignant in 5% and papillary cyst adenoma becomes malignant in 50% if left untreated. So now coming to primary ovarian tumors of epithelial tumors or epithelial origin, again divided as benign, borderline or malignant. So it can be serous tumor, then it can be mucinous tumor, can be endometrioid tumor, can be clear cell or mesonephroid tumor, Brainer's tumor or mixed tumors. Acha, some detail about borderline ovarian tumors. Borderline ovarian tumors or ovarian epithelial tumors of low malignant potential. The second name of them is ovarian epithelial tumors of low malignant potential. These were first described by Taylor, and these patients have a higher survival rate of up to 90%. Tumors run a typical indolent course. It may, however, progress to malignancy. Symptoms regress of peritoneal implants is known to occur. Spontaneous regression of peritoneal implants known to occur. Diagnosis must be based exclusively on the examination of the ovarian tumor, and multiple sections must be examined to exclude invasion. Now, epithelial ovarian tumors, serous ones, these are 10% cases bilateral, 70% are benign, 5 to 10% are borderline, and 20 to 25% malignant. Then comes mucinous type. Mucinous mein these are the main characteristics are these are of huge size, multilocular, and 85% cases these are benign only. Then Brenner is solid tumor and it is benign. Now coming to serous variety or serous tumors. These occur most commonly in late reproductive or early menopausal life. These are divided as either simple serous cyst adenoma or papillary serous cyst adenoma. So, simple serous cyst adenoma, these are unilocular. Then bilateral in 10% and turns to malignancy in 10%. These are thin-walled cysts with serous material. Then papillary serous cyst adenoma, these are unilocular or multilocular thin-walled cysts, has intracystic or external papilla, contains serous fluid with blood, bilateral in 30 to 50% and malignant also in 30 to 50% cases. The malignant forms of these are called serous cyst adenocarcinoma or serous papilliferous carcinoma. These are commonest primary ovarian carcinoma, bilateral in 50%, and exophytic papillary growth can be found on the or are found on the surface. Malignant cyst adenocarcinomas tend to occur more frequently with advancing age. In about half of the cases, they are bilateral. Then mucinous tumors. These are benign and borderline tumors, turns malignant in 10% and bilateral in 10% cases. Malignant variety is called serous cyst adenocarcinoma. Mucinous cyst adenocarcinoma have tendency to become huge mass, as I told you earlier. Multilocular cysts containing mucin. Clinical picture is of myxoma peritonei or pseudomyxoma peritonei, where rupture of the cyst occurs, leading to implantation of the tumor cells on the peritoneum, which produces mucin, leading intestinal obstruction. The tumors are essentially benign. Only 5 to 10% are malignant, as I told you, and 10 to 15% are of low malignant potential or borderline. Bilateral tumors are often metastatic from the GIT, mainly mucocele of the appendix or primary adenocarcinoma of the appendix. Mucinous tumors occur in women between 30 to 60 years, have a glistening surface, and the cut section reveals loculi filled with mucinous content. These are mucinous cysts. Just see the glistening appearance. Now coming to Brenner tumors. These are rare, found in 2 to 3% of cases only. Usually benign, turns to malignant in 5% of cases. Small solid with smooth surface like fibroma, and clinical picture can cause pressure. These can cause pressure on estrogen producing cells in the ovary, leading to estrogen production and so abnormal uterine bleeding. Histologically, one very important thing is that the tumor shows a background of fibrous tissue. Interspersed within it are nests of transitional epithelium called Walt-Hard cell rests. These cells demonstrate a longitudinal groove resembling puffed wheat. As mentioned earlier, the tumor may be combined with a mucinous adenoma of the ovary. Then other rare tumors of epithelial variety, these are clear cell tumors or mesonephroid tumor and endometrioid tumor that is associated with endometrial adenocarcinoma. Mesonephroid tumors or clear cell carcinoma is an uncommon tumor and composed of large cuboidal epithelial cells with abundant clear cytoplasm, characteristically forming tubules, glands, small cystic spaces lined by clear cells showing dark, large nuclei protruding into the lumen called Hobnail cells, and these cells are highly malignant. So this is all about epithelial tumors. Now coming to second variety, that is germ cell tumor, the second type of primary ovarian tumor. So germ cell tumors account for 15 to 20% of all ovarian tumors. Majority of tumors, about 95%, are benign only, called benign cystic teratomas or dermoids. A very important type is dermoid cyst. Below the age of 20 years, 60% of the tumors of the germs are of germ cell origin, and in girls under the age of 10 years, almost 85% belong to this group and are invariably malignant. So benign is mature cystic teratoma or mature solid teratoma. Then malignant is only 3%, 3 to 4% of ovarian carcinoma, that is immature solid teratoma, dysgerminoma, yolk sac tumor, non-gestational choriocarcinoma. To continue with germ cell tumor, these are, as I told you, these are common in children and young females. Less than in 20 years of age, 80% of ovarian malignancies are of this type only. Benign cystic teratoma or dermoid cyst, these are 10 to 15% of all ovarian tumors in young age. Bilateral in 15 to 25% and turns to malignant in 1 to 3%. The gross appearance is very important, that is size of the tumor. Size is moderate in size, that is 10 to 15 centimeter. Then thick, opaque, whitish, smooth surface is there. And in cut section, cystic unilocular containing sebaceous material with offensive odor, and one important solid part called Rokitansky protuberance or Rokitansky nodule, which shows hair, bone, teeth, or any of the this type of things. Then microscopic appearance may mix of the 3 germ layers. This is the cut section of dermoid cyst. Here you see the Rokitansky protuberance and some hairs and teeth are found. Clinical picture में the mass is found anterior to the uterus because of the long pedicle, asymptomatic, but risk of torsion is very much, of up to 15%, or rupture can cause peritonitis or causing peritonitis. Struma ovarii is a very important variety. Where, what is struma ovarii? It is teratoma containing thyroid tissue that produces T4, or it is also called thyroid adenoma. Like thyroid adenoma, the tumor is solid, consisting almost entirely of thyroid tissue and should be clearly distinguished from a dermoid cyst with thyroid tissue in its wall. Then in dermoid tissue or dermoid cyst only, I want to say one important thing, that is the combined tumors tend to arise in patients between the age of 20 to 30 years. And what is combined? Extra ovarian dermoid cyst arises occasionally in the lumbar region, uterovesical area, parasacral region, and rectovaginal septum. And dermoid cyst is frequently arises in association with mucinous cystadenoma to form a combined tumor, part of which consists of a dermoid cyst, while the rest has the characteristic structure of a mucinous cystadenoma, and tend to arise in patients between the age of 20 to 30 years, while simple dermoid cyst has a maximum age incidence between 40 to 50 years. Tumors may, however, arise at any age and bilateral, as I told you, in approximately 12 to 15% of the cases. Now coming to germ cell tumor, dysgerminoma. Dysgerminoma is very important in view that dysgerminoma corresponds to the seminoma of the testis and accounts for 3 to 5% of all ovarian tumors. It usually arises in young women or in children with an average incidence at the age of 20 years only. The tumor is solid with a peculiar elastic rubbery consistency and a smooth firm capsule. The cut surface is yellow or grey with areas of degeneration and hemorrhage. The tumor is neutral and does not secrete either male or female sex hormones, but placental alkaline phosphatase PLAP, lactate dehydrogenase and beta HCG are secreted. The malignancy rate is 30 to 50%. So it is rare, occurring usually in young ages, may occur in dysgenetic gonads, and gross appearance, as I told you earlier, unilateral, solid, rapidly growing with areas of hemorrhage and necrosis. Low grade malignant tumor is spread only by lymphatics, and very important, it is radiosensitive. It is very much radiosensitive. The presence of extrapelvic metastasis in the general peritoneal cavity, lymph glands, omentum and liver renders the outlook hopeless, and presence of active invasion of the pelvic area is a very poor prognosis. Usually unilateral tumor confined to one ovary is relatively benign and comparatively good prognosis. Then coming to choriocarcinoma. Choriocarcinoma is just either gestational choriocarcinoma or non-gestational choriocarcinoma, and as you all know, the tumor marker is HCG only. Then coming to endodermal sinus tumor or yolk sac tumor. It is highly malignant. It is radio-resistant. Need a strong combination of chemotherapy. Symptom wise causes acute abdomen rupture or hemorrhage, and tumor marker is alpha fetoprotein. Now coming to sex cord stromal tumors. So the important ones are granulosa cell tumor, which is feminizing functioning mesenchyma, then androblastoma. Androblastoma is virilizing, then gynandroblastoma, thecoma and fibroma. Number 1, that is granulosa cell tumor. These are interesting growths of the ovary composed of cells closely resembling the granulosa cells of the Graafian follicle. These are rare tumor. Gross appearance में solid yellowish with smooth surface, usually unilateral, having low grade malignant potential. Microscopic picture में, as I told you, granulosa cells with coffee bean nucleus, a very important feature. Clinical picture में the tumor produces estrogen. So usually if occurs in pre-puberty age group, can cause precocious puberty. When it is in adult female, it can cause irregular bleeding, or the picture is of like metropathia hemorrhagica. Then in postmenopausal lady, it leads to postmenopausal bleeding. Then very much prone to develop endometrial hyperplasia and endometrial carcinoma finally. These represent 10% of all solid ovarian tumors, and as these are feminizing tumors, so secrete estrogen. And as I told you earlier, इसमें the uterus shows myohyperplasia and cystic glandular hyperplasia, exactly as in metropathia hemorrhagica, and removal of the tumor causes regression of all the symptoms. Then coming to fibroma. Fibroma is 5% of benign ovarian tumor, most common solid tumor, bilateral in 5% cases. It is benign, turns to fibrosarcoma in 0.5% cases only. Gross appearance में it is lobulated, has long pedicle causing torsion, so very much prone to torsion. Cut section shows solid whitish and trabeculated appearance. Consistency is firm and harder than that of a uterine fibroma or uterine myoma. Calcareous degeneration is common. Network of spindle cells which closely resemble spindle cells of the ovarian cortex are found. The association of Brainerd tumors with ovarian fibroma is known. The combination of an ovarian fibroma with ascites or uh, ascites, right hydrothorax, and ovarian fibroma is called mixed syndrome, found in 1% of the cases. Then coming to mixed syndrome can occur with other solid ovarian tumors such as granulosa cell tumor and Brainerd tumor. Then coming to thecomas. Thecomas are solid fibromatous lesion, yellow or orange discoloration, almost always confined to one ovary, usually found in more than 40 years of age, 65% after menopause, may be hormonally active, estrogen, androgen, both are secreted as well. Luteinized thecoma, it is found in younger, sclerosing peritonitis and ascites can be found, and Leydig cell thecoma, these are rarely malignant. Then coming to androblastoma or Sertoli-Leydig cell tumors. Sertoli-Leydig cell tumors. These are rare tumors. Gross appearance में usually small, solid, yellow and unilateral. Microscopic feature में Sertoli-Leydig cells are found, and clinical features में production of androgens, very important, or it is also called virilizing mesenchyma. So production of androgens leading to first defeminization and later on can cause masculinization. In women of childbearing age, they may complain of altered body contour, flattening of the breast, scanty and irregular menstruation, ending ultimately in amenorrhea. Later signs of masculinization like increased hair growth on the face, hirsutism appear, coarsening of the features, enlargement of clitoris, and even breaking of the voice may occur. And removal of the tumor reverses the above features except the voice changes. So these are the main important tumors. Then one hilus cell tumor is a rare virilizing tumor arising from cells in the ovarian hilum and has been described in women of postmenopause. One interesting feature of hilus cell tumor is Rinke's crystals in the cells, which is a distinguishing feature of the leading or interstitial cells of the testes. Now coming to, as I told you, the important types of ovarian tumors, we should know the whole classification. So here is the WHO classification of ovarian tumors. So I am telling in detail the classification now only, after we read about the important tumors. So WHO classification of ovarian tumor is: first, common epithelial tumors, where comes serous tumor, mucinous cyst adenoma, endometrial tumors, mesonephroid or clear cell tumors, Brainerd tumors, mixed epithelial tumors, undifferentiated carcinoma, and unclassified epithelial tumors. Then comes sex cord or gonadal stromal tumors. Here comes granulosa cell tumors. ग्रैन्युलोसा सेल्स स्ट्रोमल सेल्स ट्यूमर्स में थिका सेल ट्यूमर्स और ट्यूमर्स ऑफ थिकोमा फाइब्रोमा ग्रुप like thecoma, fibroma or unclassified. Then androblastoma, where there is Sertoli cell tumor or Sertoli-Leydig cell tumor or hilus cell tumor, as I told you, gynandroblastomas and unclassified type. Then comes lipid or lipoid cell tumors, and the fourth one is germ cell tumors, where in which comes dysgerminoma, endodermal sinus tumor, embryonal cell carcinoma, polyembryoma, choriocarcinoma, teratomas and mixed forms. Then tumors composed of germ cells as well as sex cord stroma, these are Gonadoblastoma, then mixed germ cells and sex cord stromal tumors. Lastly, gonadoblastoma, then unclassified and secondary or metastatic tumors. Then about the risk factors of ovarian carcinoma. The first patient profile or patient characteristic is increasing age and family history of breast carcinoma. Some genetic factors also play a role. These are BRCA1 or 2 mutation and HNPCC syndrome, hereditary non-polyposis coli syndrome. Then environmental factors, where obesity and high fat diet leads important role, where there is unconjugated estrogen amount is high. Then comes reproductive factors, where there is nulliparity, early menarche, late menopause, infertility, polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, oral contraceptive pills and exogenous hormone replacement therapy, where exogenous estrogen level is high, or in general estrogen level high estrogen level is there. Then coming to very important part, that is complications of ovarian tumor. So to deal with complications one by one, the first and foremost is torsion or axial rotation. Torsion of an ovarian cyst is a very common complication and occurs in about 12% cases. Chocolate cyst and malignant ovarian tumors are usually fixed by adhesions. So it is very rare for these ovarian tumors to undergo torsion. On the other hand, para-ovarian cyst and broad ligament cysts are most likely pelvic tumors to undergo torsion. In most cases, the cyst is about 10 cm or over in diameter when it undergoes torsion. Because of the high incidence of mucinous cyst adenoma and dermoid cyst, torsion is most frequent seen with these tumors only. As a result of torsion, the vein in the pedicle becomes occluded, the tumors become congested, and there is interstitial hemorrhage in the wall of the tumor and into the loculi. The increased tension causes severe abdominal pain and signs of peritoneal irritation. Subsequently, adhesions form with surrounding structure so that the omentum and intestines become attached to the tumor. On occasions, the cyst may become infected. And what happens after torsion occurs? The woman often presents with acute abdominal pain, fever and vomiting. Sometimes she complains of intermittent abdominal pain referred along the obturator nerve to along the medial aspect of the thigh. Ultrasound shows swollen edematous ovary, globular in shape and free fluid in the peritoneal cavity. Pelvic findings reveal a tender mass separate from the uterus, and this requires an emergency urgent laparotomy. What happens? The color is confusing, as even when the tumor appears blackish, we cannot say about the viability with confidence. Therefore, one is advised to try and conserve the ovary if possible unless gangrene has set in. Detorsion of the ovary and ovariopexy after removal of the tumor should be attempted always. Then the second important this complication is rupture of an ovarian cyst. This may be traumatic or spontaneous. Traumatic rupture usually results from direct violence to the abdomen, may happen during labor when a cyst is impacted in the pouch of Douglas in advance of the presenting part. It is not uncommon for a small thin-walled retention cyst to rupture during bimanual examination. Then spontaneous rupture of an ovarian cyst is not uncommon with malignant ovarian tumors, particularly those of the papillomatous type. The carcinoma cells infiltrate through the connective tissue capsule to ulcerate into the peritoneal cavity. The most interesting case of spontaneous rupture are those arising with actively growing mucinous cyst adenomas. In rare cases, the condition causes pseudomyxoma of the peritoneum or pseudomyxoma peritonei. Then comes hemorrhage. It follows torsion and rupture. Woman develops abdominal pain and may vomit. A large hemorrhage requires laparotomy, removal of the tumor and resuscitation. I have told you many a times about pseudomyxoma of the peritoneae. What is this? In this condition, the peritoneal cavity is filled with coagulated mucinous material adherent to the omentum and intestine. Findings at laparotomy almost exactly resemble a boiled sago pudding. The material cannot be removed completely at operation because of its attachment to the bowel, and the condition tends to recur after operation. Usually, it occurs with mucinous adenoma of the ovary, but it has also been reported with mucocele of the appendix and carcinoma of the large intestine in men. The prognosis in pseudomyxoma of peritoneae is bad even after the ovary and appendix are removed. Then comes infection. Infection of an ovarian tumor is infrequent. Most cases follow acute salpingitis or when the cyst becomes infected during the puerperium as part of an ascending genital tract infection. Infection may also follow torsion when, as the result of adhesions to the intestine, the tumor becomes directly infected. Then comes incarceration, then malignant changes, secondary malignancy, and intestinal obstruction, which is the commonest cause of death. So these are the different complications of ovarian tumor. Then now coming to symptoms of benign ovarian tumor. Usually these are asymptomatic, discovered accidentally. There is abdominal swelling which is very slowly growing. Patient can have the pelvic pressure as frequency of micturition. Pain can be found in complicated tumors or where complications are there. Then different types of menstrual abnormalities are there if the tumor is functioning or hormone producing tumors. Then progressive wasting of the body mass in cases of huge mucinous tumors. Even ovarian tumors, even bilateral, do not generally affect the menstrual cycles. Only tumors causing menorrhagia are granulosa and theca cell tumors by virtue of their estrogen hormone production. Similarly, masculinizing tumors causes amenorrhea and virilization. Postmenopausal bleeding occurs in Brenner and feminizing tumors. Then coming to signs. So, what can be the different signs? The patient may be cachexic or cachexia may be there. Abdominal examination there will be pelvic abdominal masses, surface smooth or lobulated. If multilocular mobility, these are usually mobile. Consistency wise, these are usually cystic. Percussion में dull, fluid filling and different grades of ascites can be found. The typical ovarian cyst forms an abdominal swelling which is detected by inspection only. On palpation, the upper and lateral limits of the tumor can be defined, but it is impossible to identify the lower pole of the tumor except in cases of a relatively small cyst with a long pedicle. Then on vaginal examination, mass is felt on by manual examination. The mass is felt separate from the uterus. Now coming to differential diagnosis. Usually these are 6F like fetus or pregnant uterus, then fat, then can be flatus, then fluid or ascites, then full bladder and fibroid or myoma of uterus. Now coming to investigations. So ultrasound में transabdominal ultrasound is done if the tumor is abdominal. Otherwise, TVS gives more detailed features of the tumor. Then CT scan and MRI. Then comes laparoscopy. Then biopsy and frozen section at exploratory laparotomy. And there are some pre-operative labs like CBC, LFT, blood sugar, liver function test, kidney function test, ECG, etc. Different tumor markers we have to see in epithelial tumors, CA125 level increases. Then ovarian cancer associated antigen can be found if chances of malignancies are there. Then mucinous tumor में usually we get high level of CA19-9 and carcinoembryonic antigen, that is CEA. Then in yolk sac tumor we see high levels of alpha fetoprotein. Now coming to treatment. A single or simple unilocular cyst of less than 7 centimeters is often a functional cyst and should be observed only. Most functional cysts resolve spontaneously over 4 to 6 months. A repeat ultrasound is done to pick up a persistent cyst which requires removal. To expedite resolution, oral contraceptive pills may be prescribed for 3 to 4 months in women of reproductive age, as this may help in its resolution. Then one important point is of prophylactic oophorectomy. What about prophylaxis? So bilateral removal of ovaries at hysterectomy is also desirable in a high risk woman with a family history of ovarian cancer, colonic and breast cancer, previous hyperstimulation of ovaries in cases of infertility, and in a woman carrying BRCA type 1 and type 2 genes. The premenopausal women having undergone bilateral oophorectomy may require supportive hormone replacement therapy. Then ultimate treatment. So the treatment comprises of either ovarian hysterectomy and bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, or unilateral ovariotomy, or ovarian cystectomy in very young patients. Then laparoscopic cystectomy, ovariotomy, then laparoscopic or ultrasound guided aspiration and removal of the cyst. Oophorectomy is done when ovarian tissue is damaged or in cases of torsion, and TH plus bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy if the patient is having associated uterine pathology. Laparoscopy carries a low morbidity and allows a quick recovery without a conventional abdominal scar, so it is preferred and performed by first aspirating the cyst fluid followed by dissection of the cyst wall or by ablation. Mere aspiration of fluid is not recommended on account of recurrence of the tumor, so aspirated material or cyst should be subjected to histopathology to rule out the cancer. Ablation of cyst wall carried out with cautery or laser carries the risk of recurrence of the cyst, so while dissecting or peeling off of the cyst wall, it avoids recurrence, so we have to dissect the cyst wall. Bleeding during dissection, adhesion formation and reduction of ovarian reserve are the disadvantages of this technique, but still to avoid recurrence we do ovarian cystectomy or we remove the cyst wall. Thank you, and next will be in next other lecture.